Welcome to Maroon Sports Talk, your go-to podcast for all things sports at EKU. Join us each week as we dive into the latest games and explore the world of sports. Whether you bleed Maroon or just love college sports, this podcast is your ticket to staying informed. I'm Kaitlyn Andrews.
I'm Speer.
I'm Joey Aguirre.
And I'm Caleb Wells.
Welcome back, Caleb. Week 2.
Yay!
Kind of our first sport we want to kind of dive into here is softball, and they have a series this weekend against Austin Peay. I kind of wanted to talk about statistics. We usually don't talk about statistics a lot on this show. We kind of just kind of go over briefs, and I kind of wanted to dive deep here and kind of compare and contrast just the overall pitching quality that EKU has.
For sure.
It is pretty crazy. Can you want to dive into that if you can, Caitlin?
Yeah, so right now we have Maddie Rutan, who is really just leading the way with ERA and has a 1.1 of that, which is just astounding for a softball player. It's just crazy to see, especially as a freshman. So that's really cool. And then closely following her, and I am going to butcher this name, Tatum? Do you think it's just Tatum?
I have no idea, probably.
Lugansky is, I think, what the last name is. But yeah, so those two are really our front runners with pitching, but having Maddie really far ahead. But she's just had a stellar performance. I feel like if you know EKU softball, you know her name at this point, especially this far into the season. So I just think she's been a really fun pitcher to watch so far.
Yeah, and I really do think here, kind of the average, it kind of says here on the website, is just an ERA of 2.32 and a WHIP of 1.14, which is kind of your on base, allowing players to get on base and really walks plus hits earned inning pitch, which is really interesting because it's just so low, and you don't see that a lot in collegiate sports. And Maddie Rutan just got announced as one of the top 5 two-way players in the country.
Yeah, makes sense.
It's just crazy, and she has a whip of .77 and a record of 16-2. I mean, anytime she steps on the plate, it feels like the game's automatically won. And then against NKU a few weeks ago, one of their final games at home before they had a road trip, she had a walk-off home run, and Mercy ruled them right then and there, 12-2. And she also pitched that game, so having that caliber of a player. And hopefully she doesn't transfer. We talk about, I think, every week about transfers. And I really hope she kind of stays here at EKU. I mean, she's just a dominant player, and she can be in the forefront all 4 years. So for
sure. I think when you have a player that can bat and can pitch really well at such a high quality, that is so comforting to have, especially with someone so young. You can feel very confident in her abilities and kind of, she may not be a leader in an upperclassman type of way, but is obviously a leader on the field, on the pitch. So
and just as a freshman, correct? And
yes.
It's just crazy. And then our batting average is 2 over 400. We have 2 players over 400 to clarify, and an OPS. Janae Riley has an OPS of 1.145, which means that she gets on base more than below the 500 mark, and I think the top 1, 2, 3, 4, more than 5 or 6 players have an OPS of over 7.
Yeah.
Which is just unreal and unheard of. The Greek Life game is coming up this Tuesday.
Exciting.
And kind of it'll get a lot of people out there to kind of see this team, and even EKU was like, hey, you guys should go over to the softball
they made
field.
that post.
And so, Joey, for you, you're in Greek Life.
Yes.
How do you think the reaction is going to be to when these people that don't come to the game a lot of the time, and they're playing Louisville, a high caliber D1 in-state rival? What do you think will kind of be the message for the fans if they do come out for the win, and even a Mercy Rule, which they've been doing nonstop over the season?
Well, I think because we're all EKU students, we're all just going to get overly excited when EKU does win. And I am very confident in that based off of the stats you guys just said, but also the way they've been playing.
We have convinced Joey.
But also the way they've been playing, too, that they are an unbeatable force. They're essentially a freight train.
Yeah.
That is a great way to put it, I feel like. Yeah, that's a great analogy.
They're just going through and just destroying every team who gets
full steam
there.
They are. 29-5 is the record right now, overall. And it's 11-1 in conference so far.
Nothing's going to stop them. They're just going to keep going.
Let's hope not. I mean, this is crazy.
And in correlation, with what you were asking Joey about getting, the Greek fans out there, and you were talking about, hoping that Maddie doesn't transfer and everything. I think a good way to do that is by getting out and supporting. When they're out there and they know they've got this huge fan base that's just really supporting them. why would they want to leave? Why would they want to transfer? So
Yeah.
I think as EKU, like students and fans, showing love and support's a great way to get players to stay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, when you have over 10 players with the overall like OPS of over like 1, I mean, that's just crazy. And kind of, we're gonna flip the script here a little bit and kind of dive into men's tennis. Kind of their home and away record. Caleb, you mentioned this to me the other day, and I kind of wanted to talk about it on here. Their home
Right.
record versus their away record. Can you kind of like talk about that a little bit?
Right. So the men's tennis team has been having a stellar season.
Another freight train, honestly.
Another freight- yeah.
They've had what's arguably, and most would say, the best season in school history. They've had the highest ranked singles win. Moritz Mayer, one of EKU's best
He's
players.
crazy.
Oh, he's incredible. He's from Germany. He's in his senior season with EKU, but he took on a player from Georgia, 43rd ranked player in the country, and absolutely dismantled him.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then they have a undefeated home record of 16-0, which
Wow.
is, I believe, second in the country right now. Tennessee was first, but the only struggle seemed to be the away games. They have a home record of 16-0, but for away, they're 4-6. And so I actually had the opportunity recently to sit with men's and women's tennis head coach Adam Cohen, and we got to talk about just a lot of different things. But one of the things he expressed was just like home court advantage is just very, very real. And then that was his biggest message to me, was just that, like, it's all about playing where you're comfortable, but also, like, I told him, does home court advantage really exist in a sport like tennis? Because when you think tennis, you think quiet, you think, like very calm environment. But he said, like, when it comes to EKU, the fans are passionate. Like, he said,
That's awesome.
yeah, like, even for a sport like tennis, he said it gets rowdy, it gets loud. And he said, like, for a sport like tennis, when you bring energy to something like that, they're almost unstoppable.
Yeah.
So that's why he thinks, they have so much success at home. As far as away games, he said, sleep habits definitely come into play. He said that's a huge thing when it comes to sports, and he's trying to, like, look more at that. And then he also said just being in, like, uncomfortable environments, and then also the idea that just because of Kentucky weather, we've played a lot indoors, while when traveling, I think they've played some outdoors, and that changes, the spin on the ball, the temperature for players.
Yeah, and I think that was kind of one of the Achilles heel for like the basketball team too last season. I mean, me and Kaitlyn kind of covered that a little bit for the progress. Is they kind of had the Achilles heel of like not being able to win away, and it was a really big fight. Like Bellarmine took them down to the last 5 minutes, one of the worst teams in the conferences. So I really do think the home versus the away and the travel, you always see that talking about. People only think football or basketball, and it's true for every single sport. And kind of diving towards Kaitlyn over here, kind of you played soccer. What was kind of the like mental health factor and physical aspect of always traveling, especially for soccer too?
Yeah, I think when you're traveling, like, it's exhausting. Like, it gets tiring, and you're like, for soccer, I'm not sure how all sports are. Like, you're on a bus for like, I don't know, 8 hours. I think when we went to Central Arkansas was like around that time, and wow, you're just sitting there, your legs are cramping, and then you gotta, like, you're eating, you're trying to sleep right, like, you're trying to do everything right, but it's not the same as waking up in your own bed, eating your, routine breakfast that you always eat before a game.
Taste
like,
dining hall.
yeah. It's always like, it's different, and you kind of have to get used to that, especially if you are a superstitious person, which I really wasn't, but I had a lot of teammates who had superstitions. It's like, okay, now how do you do that when you're away? So I think, yeah, that travel aspect is really hard, and then playing on a field or a court or whatever that isn't yours is extremely difficult. Like, it just adds so much to it. Like, I know people come play here at EKU for soccer and struggle on the field. And before I transferred here, like, I only played on turf, and I came here and played only on grass, which is very different. So obviously there's a lot of different factors to it, and fans, like you talked about, like, when there's a bunch of people booing you, it's way different than a bunch of people cheering for you. So it's a lot of, like, mental toughness, I think. But I think, when you get to play at the college level, you get kind of used to it, and hopefully are able to overcome that a little bit, but it's hard for sure.
Did he discuss with you, Caleb, kind of any like postseason thing? Because I know we haven't really touched on that. Like, where can tennis go from here? Or is it just
Right,
regular
yeah.
that's a
season
great
forever?
question. So they actually just punched their ticket to the ASUN conference tournament, which is huge. just beat Stetson, who was the 68th best team in the country.
That was their first ranked team win.
Yeah, so that's the
think.
first win they've had against. They've had like singles or doubles wins against ranked opponents before, but they've never actually flat out beat an entire team. So they beat Stetson, who was 68, and also a conference rival. So that was huge.
That's awesome.
And punched their ticket to ASUN conference tournament.
I definitely think that kind of awakes the athletics side of it.
Absolutely.
With funding, or I don't know how any of that works. That can be a whole episode in itself, but really just kind of being like, we have a really good program. We should kind of think about where to go from here. And I think if they do make a run of the ASUN championship, then that'll be something that the athletics department, has to be thinking about.
Yeah.
And kind of pivoting away from those sports. Joey, anything you talk about? We've been discussing travel. How does esports kind of operate with traveling? I know you mentioned they don't, but have you had any recollection of traveling? I know you just mentioned you had an article beforehand going live, so kind of talk about that.
So this article is actually called "The Toll of Travel on Esports Athletes."
Oh, okay.
That's interesting.
And so one of the main points this article ends up making is, especially for esports, what I've seen is people will practice for hours on end, especially the pro teams. Like they'll do 8-10 hour practices just during the day. So if these teams are traveling to another country, they miss out on practice time that their opposing team is getting. And there's also the time change, which, I mean, as Kaitlyn mentioned, it's different here than if you're traveling across
an ocean or
something. But your sleep schedule is going to get all messed up. Everything changes the moment you start to travel for these athletes, even esports, because you don't have your equipment with you right away. Like you need to set everything back up. And then unless equipment's provided, then you need to use theirs.
Oh, so is it different then if you use someone else's? Okay.
If you have your own equipment, you have your own, like, okay, so this is what my settings are. They're already set up. I'm used to them. And then, like, other people could have mouse sensitivities that are different. And
oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that.
It makes it so much harder to adjust to when you need to make those changes.
Yeah.
I have a follow-up for you. So in some sports, in most sports, you don't like practice or like participate in physical activity too close to the actual game. Yeah. Like, is that different in esports? Because I guess you don't have to worry about, being sore or something going on.
I was going to ask a similar question, actually, because I was interested in that.
Do you practice for hours, like, the day before, or do you take a break for, like, mental,
I'm
just really curious how that works.
I think it really depends on the team. Like, especially for me on the league team, we would practice up until game time. Like, the moment we got out of classes, we would all get on our computers and just start playing until we hit our game. We might take like an hour break before the game just to like reset our mental and like get back into the actual game.
Do you ever get burnt out doing that?
There is burnout. Okay. Burnout does end up happening.
My head would hurt.
But like where most of us keep playing and we enjoy playing the game, so it's harder for us to get burnt out. So like we've built up a tolerance, you could say.
Yeah, there's a lot of passion.
Like burning out and that. But I also do have an article on why esports is good in schools.
Okay.
If you
discuss that. Yeah, for sure.
So it gives people a community, and that's one of the biggest things it does, is it includes everyone. So like, while yes, there's those physical sports, not everyone wants to do those physical sports or is able to.
Yeah,
There's people who aren't able to compete in physical sports, but esports would give them a chance to actually compete and be a part of a community within their college or school, and it gives them opportunities. There's also 97%, so this is for high school. In 2018, 97% of teen boys and 83% of teen girls played video games.
Wow! Oh my
I'll
gosh,
be honest,
that's a crazy
girl
stat.
Statistic surprised me.
I believe it though. A lot of people I know play.
The thing is,
games.
I didn't expect like there to be that many.
Yeah.
Like I expected it to be maybe around 60, not 83.
So is that like for specific games, or can it be like even phone games?
I think
stuff
it's
like
all
that?
games.
Okay, gotcha.
Because it doesn't specify. It just says played video games.
No, I get that because a lot of people on my team were obsessed with that Monopoly Go game for like
Yeah,
a really long time.
I know people
I
who
believe
still
it.
are obsessed with that. But
Yeah.
it says that people who are involved in extracurricular activities tend to do better in school.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
so this gives them another route to be involved in those extracurricular activities and participate.
That's awesome.
And then it lists a bunch of skills that you learn through esports, and it's working with others, social skills, strategic thinking and planning, managing success and failure, time management, travel skills, and then pro-social values. And then it also helps them get into STEM learning too,
So
because
cool,
you
yeah.
do, at least we did it a few times where we would look at statistics and like win rates on certain champions and for both teams,
Yeah.
and you start to dive into the actual different advantages you can have.
Wow, that's.
I believe it. Yeah.
Yeah, I
honestly.
completely agree, and kind of that's great insight, Joey. Thank you so much. And kind of moving back to the diamond here, baseball.
Back
Kind
to
of
the
a different story here for baseball. It seems to be that I was looking at statistics here. We have around 10 players that hit over 200.
Yeah.
And it seems to be that the offense can get going. It's just the pitching aspect, and you can win games with just strictly offense, but once your pitching isn't really going, you have to fight on to winning double-digit games.
Yeah.
And then if you don't have a bad day on offense and the pitching struggles, you're going to lose almost every single time.
For sure.
And so just kind of the mental aspect here, we have Connor Davis, who has an average of 3.59 and an OPS of 1. And that's kind of where the leading leader for the softball team was kind of at. And then Max Williams, one of our really good players, has an average of 3.10 and an OPS of 9.32. Those two seem to be kind of leading the team
Yeah,
here in average and
definitely.
OPS. And so I kind of wanted your insights on just what do you think, how do the mental aspect for the pitchers, how can that rise, and how should that be able to help the team out?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard because as we've talked about and as we've seen, like, they've been interchanging those pitchers a lot. Like, there have been a lot of games where I think there was a game we had, like, 6 different pitcher changes and, like, there was 3 different pitchers in 2 innings or something crazy like that. So they've really been trying to find their footing with these pitchers and giving opportunities to people, like, on the plus side, like, you get to see other pitchers who may not have gotten a whole lot of opportunity before. But I think we've really seen, at least what I've seen, is Nathan Lawson, that number 25, has really been a starting pitcher for them these past few games especially. He's got the 6.98 ERA, but Riker Walton has sort of started to take over a little bit more recently, too. I've seen who has the ERA of
And there's more than
6.17.
17 pitchers listed that have pitched in a game.
Yeah.
And I think it might be even 20, 21. I can't sit here and count on air,
1,
but
2, 3, 4, no.
some of them have double-digit ERAs, and it's more than 6. And it just seems to be that they can't find the pitcher that can get him over that hump and be able to take him to the finish line.
Like, softball has Maddie Rutan. They don't really have that.
They don't really have
So-
Matty Rattan.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how familiar you are with last year's roster, but
Okay.
the guy that was like their ace, their leading pitcher, was Luke Reed from last
He
year.
had a surgery,
He
right?
did.
Yeah.
So, he had the UCL surgery, Tommy John surgery, and hasn't thrown a pitch all year. So that definitely hurt them, like going into the season not having who they thought was going to be their solid number one. Because when you've got that number one, you're able to play around and find who your 2s and 3s are. But when you don't even know who your best pitcher is coming into the season, it's
I mean, it's
hard
just
to find that.
It
it's
is
very
hard.
correlating to when the baseball team has an average ERA of 8 and the women's have an average ERA of 2.8. It's just a tale of 2 halves, and so hopefully they can find that sticking pitcher that can get them to the finish line. It does seem to be Nathan Lawson and Riker Walton, and there's only 2 guys on the roster who have a minimum requirement of more than 1 inning per game. And over 15 to 16 players don't meet that requirement. It just seems to be that they're throwing anything out there and hopefully something.
Yeah, they're trying to
Right.
find something that will stick. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
just kind of trying a lot of different things. But right now, their record in conference is 6-6.
Right middle of the pack too. I'll check
Yeah.
Ace and Stains before.
I
we
mean,
live.
for a 9-23 overall, 6-6 in conference isn't too terrible.
And that's
Like,
kind
I
of things we
honestly
talked
think,
about 2
yeah,
weeks ago, where if they do be able to meet that requirement for ASUN that can get into the championship and hopefully make a run, that record won't matter at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
where you are in the placement is all that really matters. I'm seeing a lot of, losses at the beginning of the season, but we're seeing a few wins getting scattered in here and there, and if there's any time to start getting good, it's right about
And
now.
hopefully
so.
that with also they're having a Greek night too next week. Hopefully having a large crowd out there will be able to boost their morale.
Yeah.
And then hopefully get them over the finish line to the ASUN championship.
Yep, that always
So-
helps.
Kind of pivoting here to kind of 30 minutes the road. Calipari is leaving UK. So any thoughts on that? Anybody? Calipari?
I'm very passionate on this topic.
I was waiting for you. I saw the grin.
I looked right at Caleb. I was like, you got it.
Anybody
I'm a
at
big University of Kentucky basketball fan, but I've got to say his time was over. I'm ecstatic that he's gone. Like, I think a lot of people are now like that. Like, we're saying they wanted him gone, and then now that he's gone, they're like, oh, but what now? And I think a lot of them are like shell shocked and like scared of the future. I personally am not. The style of basketball that he's been coaching doesn't win championships right now. He's been playing the one and done system. It was great when he introduced it to basketball, bringing in, just 8, 10 of the best recruits in the country and having them play. That doesn't work anymore because of COVID, because of transfer rules, NIL
People
money.
are finishing their degrees. They're not doing one and dones. They're not, and it's just over with.
Your freshman cannot beat a team full of 5, 6 juniors and seniors. It just doesn't work right now.
And they don't mesh. And I hated the way he preached. Wait till March. Wait
Yep.
till March. Wait
Yep.
till March.
Yep.
You haven't gotten a Final Four in 4 or 5 years.
I think it's been
maybe?
since 2015.
Yeah.
I think
Oh my gosh.
I think Karl Anthony Towns was the last
And
team
I
to make the
think
Final Four.
I think Mitch Barnhart giving him that lifetime contract
Yep.
after the 38-0 year just
Yep.
not a good idea. Luckily, we don't have to eat that $33 million
Right.
up.
Arkansas does a huge favor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arkansas.
So, get some new blood in there. Hopefully, someone younger. I don't like the idea.
I would love to see them have a modern coaching approach coming up.
Give me someone like A.W. Hamilton who's passionate on the sidelines.
Right.
And I mean, he is too, but I don't know. Just after A.W. took accountability after games. It just didn't really seem like after the Oakland game he took that accountability. Granted, now I'm just a student at EKU. I'm not a Hall of Fame coach or anything like that. But the one and done system did not work.
It did not work.
It doesn't work anymore.
And from what I've been reading, Barnhart, the athletic director, is looking to find a coach that is wanting to play the transfer portal game. The names I'm hearing the most are Scott Drew from Baylor. He's the head coach from Baylor. He's been great at pulling in transfers, won a championship 2 or 3 years ago with a team that probably shouldn't have won a national championship.
Nate Oates already said he doesn't want to come here.
Nate Oates has said he's not coming. Dan Hurley has said he's not coming.
Why would he?
You
won back to back. Why would you?
He's working on a dynasty with UConn, and then Nate Oates reason to leave. He has 3 of his best players returning, and then has 3 5-star recruits coming in for Alabama. So we got to be a little more realistic than those kind of coaches.
Jay Wright is not.
Jay Wright's not coming out of retirement.
He likes CBS too much.
But the realistic names I am hearing have been Scott Drew from Baylor. He'd be a great option. I have heard Billy Donovan a lot. Okay, he was an assistant for Kentucky. And then he coached 2 national championships. Only coach in the last 2 decades to win back-to-back national championships. One in 2006, one in 2007 with the Florida Gators. And then he moved on to the NBA, was with the Thunder for a while, and now he's with the Bulls. But what I'm at least reading and seeing online is that the Bulls have been already looking at coaches for next year because they're pretty dead set on the fact that Donovan will leave for Kentucky if his name gets called.
That's kind of crazy.
I don't want to happen in when Cal get 2008, 2009. I don't want Billy Donovan to do what he did back then and gaslight us into make outcome and then back out.
Right.
And then we're screwed. I don't want that to happen again because what happens if the Bulls win the play-in game and they make a run?
Yeah.
They're going to keep it.
That's the interesting thing. So the Bulls are on that fringe line right now. So a lot of people consider them a bad team, but they're in play-in. So if they make a run and then they show that they have a little bit of potential, they get a good first-round pick. DeRozan says he's sticking around. They get Levine to stay.
Say you hold out for Billy Donovan, and they make it, and then you're waiting May or June in the playoffs, and then all your options are gone. And something funny happened too. Someone called KSR and Kentucky Sports Radio, and they were like, "Hey, Don Staley," and he kind of laughed him off air. But it got me thinking. I was like, why would you say no to someone that has a 103 record, 101 to be exact, 101-3 record, and just won the national championship. Yeah,
crazy.
No. And I don't want people being like, oh, you know what you're talking about in sports.
Right.
But what do you do? What do you do if you get this, just make history and I don't know. I was like, that's not a horrible idea.
Yeah, I mean.
Wait, so who in your perfect world would take over coaching there?
Probably Billy Donovan from Chicago. I'm afraid they win their playing game and make a run. We hold out, and then we're left getting the scraps.
Yeah, I'm gonna say the same thing as Nick. I think Donovan. He's coached with Kentucky before. He's coached at Kentucky, not only, just being there, but he was there when we were good, when we were elite. And also when we didn't have to have 8 5-star recruits to win games,
Yeah.
He had our teams when we were like scrappy. We had, in-state recruits. We had juniors. We had seniors. The recruiting classes weren't nearly as extensive as Cal's, but we actually won games. And so Donovan knows how to do that. He did it at Florida.
Yeah.
The last time they went back-to-back, it was Billy Donovan, the University of Florida.
Yes.
And it'll be Scott Drew or Billy Donovan most likely.
Most likely.
They're not flashy hires,
No.
but win games.
They do.
And and then maybe Don Staley. I don't know.
Maybe.
I don't see why. Make her tell you no.
Right.
Make her tell you no.
Right.
I just don't see people are like, oh, women's and men's is different, man.
If the best candidate's a woman, she's still the best candidate.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly. And
Very true.
she 101-3. I'm
I know.
pretty sure.
That's crazy.
And she has the attitude to be able to handle the pressure at Kentucky.
She does.
From
That'd be so
She's
cool.
from
She does.
Philadelphia.
It would be very cool. to
She's
see.
from
That'd be really
Philadelphia. She has the style. She has the finesse. And I just don't see why someone would tell her no to come play for her. I mean, I don't know. And Billy Donovan and Scott Drew, and then pipe dream Don Staley.
But
So-
do you see any potential with the team that they had this year? Like, I know we're talking about coaching, but like from a team, I know they're a very, very, very young team, but did you see any potential there? You guys are kind of the experts on this.
Rob Dillingham's going to the draft. I would tell Reed Shepard, because what happened for football for Tim Couch when he played in the 90s, he hated the offensive coordinator to coach wherever it was. And the athletic director was like, just give me a second. I'm going to fire him. He legit said that. I'm going to fire him. Give me a second. I'll find someone you like. And they actually, I'd say ask Reed Shepard to stay another year. He's probably not going to do it.
What I've seen is that Shepard was actually maybe flirting with the idea of coming back to Kentucky. And now that Cal's gone, he's probably headed to the draft. At least is what I've seen. Dillingham's gone. Aaron Bradshaw, one of our 5-star recruits, he's already put his name in the transfer portal.
Okay.
But what I have heard is Adu Thiero, he went ahead and put his name in the portal weeks before Cal was fired. Now that Cal's gone, he's possibly considering coming back.
Okay.
So that would be huge. He would be a junior. He's a phenomenal player, just one of those do-it-all, real scrappy players. Be great to have him back. But I think, a lot of people, that's the big concern is with Cal gone, can we still get recruits? And that's not my concern. I think we can win games with more mature players because these freshmen just cannot compete with the juniors and seniors. So we're not winning in tournament play. That's not a concern for me. I get we're not going to see, 3 straight #1 recruiting classes anymore without Coach Calipari. But if we were winning games, we're getting players that stick around. They're mature. They know how to handle these tight pressure situations like the tournament, and we're winning games again. I could care less whether they're going to play in the NBA or not.
You have experience too, and that's kind of what happened with EKU women's basketball this year. We had that maturity, we had that experience. We had Alicia who played overseas and against. She told me in Kaitlyn interview against middle school and then sometimes in high school playing against guys because her school, quote unquote, didn't have like a whole women's league. And then Antoinette Walker, in her interview at the press conference, she told me that she had the experience. Granted, they didn't win the first round of the NIT, but they made it.
Right.
They made it. They won games. They had a better record than most people in their conference. They had that maturity. It wasn't one and done. And now she's going to the draft.
Right.
Yeah.
And so.
Well, I mean, think about it. If you have a roster coming in, and every single year, your roster, like 4 out of your 5 starters, 3 out of your 5 starters have never played in March Madness, how do you expect to win in March Madness?
Yeah, it's a different game.
It's a different game. That's
you have
why
nothing to compare it to.
And it also helped, too, I think, for women's basketball. Here, we had a transfer from Ohio State, one of the bigger conferences in the league.
Yeah.
Right.
And we had just maturity, and we had that finesse, we had the swagger, and it just...
It feels different when you have people that know what they're doing.
Exactly.
Kind of speaking of women's basketball too, we kind of wanted to talk about Kaitlyn Clark and Dawn Staley because she was able to shut down Kaitlyn Clark and they won the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you tell me that that a woman can't coach in men's, she just shut down one of the greatest players of all time.
Yeah.
And so she had 23 some odd points, but then she had less than 20 the rest of the time. She changed her scheme, she changed it up, and they won the game.
Yeah.
She let her score, but can anyone else step up? Granted, they had 2 other players in the 20-point range, but
Yeah.
and she actually thanked Kaitlyn Clark.
That's what I was. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
She
what you
loved
love
that.
to see.
I
She
love
thanked
that.
Kaitlyn Clark for the game because the women's championship had more viewers than the men's.
Right.
So
I mean, yeah, like you have to have mad respect for Kaitlyn Clark. I know, like obviously you're competing against her. You want to be like, gosh, that girl. But
I'm sorry, call me crazy. You gotta call it on Staley. Make her tell you no. I'm just saying, call me crazy. Tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about. You just at least gotta give her a call, or at least flirt with the idea.
Right.
So I just think I don't want to hold out for Billy Donovan, and then they make a run, and then he's
that
like,
would be such a cool thing to see. So
Sorry.
obviously I'm behind that as well.
Sorry, too late. And so UConn won again.
Yes.
They had that experience. They brought in those transfers, and
They did.
back to back.
It's just a strong
Well,
team.
and I think just the biggest thing to look at too is not to rain on Zach Edey's parade. He's best player in the country, at least award-wise. But I think you just got to look at the track that he played. Klingon was the first 7-footer he had to go up against, and though Edey scored a ton, I just think he had like the first step of adversity. And I think Dan Hurley did a really good job of give Edey his points. What's the rest of the team going to do?
That's what Don Staley did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think Dan Hurley did a great job of
Don Staley.
it just yeah. But I think Dan Hurley coached a great game. Like we said, he has no reason to leave UConn for Kentucky. He's working on building a dynasty,
he
as
also-
he said. in his
Yeah,
own
he's got a
words.
good thing going
He
there.
also has that passion, and they just passed Duke for most champions.
Yeah.
They have 6 now.
Most in the last 2 decades.
He has that attitude. He actually stepped on the floor to
my
get
gosh.
almost got in a fight with Zach Edey, who's 3 foot taller than him. So, kind of moving on towards the end here. Kind of talking about sports moments, championships, and all that. Kaitlyn, what's your favorite moment you had from playing like EKU soccer? We were kind of talking about it before.
Yeah, we talked about it before. It's so hard to like pick one moment because, you're kind of just like, it's kind of goes by quickly. It feels very long when you're in it, but it goes by quickly at the end, like when you're trying to reminisce. I'm like, what even was that? But I think some of my favorite moments were just like regular moments with my teammates. Like, I think it's really fun to say, my favorite moment was playing in this stadium or that stadium or whatever. But I think at the end of the day, it's like those seeing my teammates every morning, like at 6 in the morning, like you're getting up at 5 and you see all these people and you're like, well, at least we're going through this together and at least like we're in it together. So honestly, some of my favorite moments were those ones where we were like going through stuff together was probably some of my favorite times.
Kind of, Joey, what's kind of been your favorite moment, like esports wise? Do you have a favorite match you've ever done or anything like that?
Favorite moment, favorite clip?
Yes. Yeah. I actually enjoy competing against the people who are higher than me, and even though I was the lowest rank on the team, we may have been like close to losing, but our communication was 10 times better than theirs, it seemed like, and we would end up beating them. So me being able to beat someone who's a higher rank than me in my position and just essentially wiping the floor felt amazing.
Yeah. I'm not a student athlete, but kind of my favorite moment that I've ever watched and experienced was in the student section 2 years ago last year against North Alabama in the quarterfinals. We destroyed them by like 30, and Cozart went off, and it was one of Cooper Rob's last games, and it was just so much fun. And then people were actually shouting at McFadden to give A-Dub a blank check, and he actually did extend later on, so it was kind of funny. But it was kind of just 6,000 people, almost sold out arena. It was just so much fun, and then kind of what wanted me to get working in sports, and I changed my major, so that was super fun. Kind of, Caleb, what about you?
So I've only been on campus, for 2 semesters now, so I haven't got to see, maybe as much as you all have, but I would say definitely that we did. I don't remember the opponent. I think it was FGCU, but
the ESPNU game.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I was thinking of the right one. So when we played Florida Gulf Coast, it was the game started at 9:20. It was a whiteout, super late. Yeah, they were just like giving out all kinds of free stuff to get students there. The place was packed, everybody in white. I was in the student section. People were screaming.
Yeah.
It was so much fun. And I remember Florida Gulf Coast had they had a player on their team. He never even stepped on the court, but like he was a big the TikTok star. The TikTok star.
I felt so bad for him.
It was just hilarious seeing like all of the stadium just like come together and just yell, "We want TikTok!" every timeout, every media timeout. So it was just really fun, a really good environment, and it just showed me that like even though I'm not going to UK or U of L, like we can still have like a really crazy and fun, passionate fan base at a D1 school.
I remember like homecoming last year, and like my mom came to the game, and we were trying to find like a seat. Because I like took off work that day, not filming because I wanted to spend the time with my mom, and we couldn't find a seat in the lower section. I was like, oh, they'll be open, and nothing was open. We had to go all the way up top, so it was pretty fun seeing these packed out crowds.
Yeah, it gets packed.
Yeah, so but that kind of wraps it up for this week. Appreciate you guys listening, and tune in to us next week. We have a couple more episodes to go before the end of the semester. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.